The corporate retreat was on a yacht slicing through the dark waters off the Californian coast. Most had turned in by midnight, but Alara's mind was still buzzing. A late-night snack from the galley grill seemed like the only solution. On her way, she passed the suite of her boss, Julian Vance. A strange, rhythmic sound emanated from within, one that brought a flush to her cheeks. It was best not to listen. She turned to leave, but her eyes caught a flicker of motion in the air before her. Lines of glowing text materialized in her vision, like comments floating over a video. "Big Eater. Huh? You know he's using your photo in there." Alara froze in front of Julian's door, a wave of profound self-doubt washing over her. She wondered if she'd gotten food poisoning from the calamari earlier. Before she could convince herself it was a hallucination, more text scrolled by. "Listen to Mama, someone's getting disciplined tonight." Another followed. "Report. Male lead has an unhealthy obsession with his secretary." The comments grew more brazen. "TSK, where are the morals? More importantly, where's the address?" A strange curiosity took hold. She held her breath, pressing her ear against the cool metal of the door. The suite's soundproofing wasn't perfect. Julian's heavy breathing was shockingly clear, punctuated by a low murmur. "Alara, my sweet girl." Her eyes widened. Julian Vance was the company's notorious ice king, all business and no warmth. In her 6 months as his assistant, she had worked diligently, never daring to even consider an office romance. She stumbled back in disbelief, her elbow knocking against the wall with a soft thud. The sounds inside ceased abruptly. In that moment of absolute silence, one thought dominated her mind. "I'm so fired." She scrambled back to her room and dove under the covers. Just before sleep claimed her, she pulled out her phone and sent a message to her roommate, Ryan, who was on an archaeology dig in Greece. She asked him about his distant relative, the one who ran the company she worked for. She wanted to know if Julian Vance was gay. By the time she woke, the yacht was nearing the shore. She packed in a frenzy, and it was only when she reached the deck that she noticed the bareness of her wrist. The simple red braided cord she always wore was gone. Her work buddy, Leo, waved her over. She shoved her luggage into his arms, asking him to watch it for a moment before rushing back to her cabin. She was on her hands and knees searching when she spotted a thin strand of something under the dresser. After a struggle, she hooked it and pulled it out, only to find it was a phone charger. She cursed her eyesight. Suddenly, a cool voice spoke from above. Julian Vance asked what she was looking for. Startled, she looked up into his impeccably sculpted face. "Mr. Vance?" she stammered, scratching her cheek. She explained that she had lost a bracelet. He looked down at her, his expression as unreadable as ever. Remembering the text from the night before, she averted her gaze. It had to be a hallucination. There was no way the Ice King could be interested in her. The glowing script hadn't reappeared since either. As her mind raced, a flash of red entered her vision. "Is this yours?" His hand, so pale that blue veins were visible beneath the skin, held out the red cord. The visual contrast was arresting. Her ears burned. She confirmed it was hers and asked where he had found it. Julian's eyes held a cryptic, probing quality. "Outside my door," he stated, his voice even. "Last night." As soon as he spoke, the dense script of comments flooded her vision again. "Yeah, right, like you haven't been watching her every move. You knew exactly whose that was." Another chimed in, "Hey, wasn't that the cord he was using to, last night?" The text became increasingly explicit. Alara ducked her head, her face crimson. She mumbled that she must have dropped it when she walked by. Julian's gaze lingered on her hot ears. His voice was low, and for a moment, strangely gentle as he told her to go, now that she had found what she was looking for. Back in her own apartment, she slept until evening. She was in the middle of boiling water for pasta when a message from Ryan arrived. He asked what was wrong. She typed out a long, frantic message about her boss and the floating text, then deleted it all. Telling someone her boss was secretly obsessed with her sounded unhinged. Adding in the phantom text messages would surely earn her a referral to a psychiatrist. She carefully composed a new message, claiming it was just some silly office gossip she'd heard. Ryan didn't press. Instead, he asked for her thoughts on same-sex relationships. She thought for a moment before replying that she didn't oppose or dislike them. It took him a long time to respond with a simple, "Okay." A moment later, a screenshot appeared. It was a message from his parents. His cousin was moving to Bridgewater City for a job and needed a place to stay. They had offered Ryan's apartment. Ryan explained apologetically that it was difficult for him to refuse his parents. His apartment was a spacious two-bedroom, but one room was his office and the other his home gym. Lying on the sofa, she messaged back that it was no problem. She would be out in a couple of days. Ryan had helped her immensely, from career planning to finding this job and letting her stay here rent-free. She had meant to move out once she was stable, but work had consumed her. She began scrolling through rental listings, eventually falling asleep with the phone in her hand. The following Monday, after the weekly staff meeting, Leo nudged her. He whispered that Laura, the head secretary, was pregnant and about to go on maternity leave. This explained her absence that morning. Leo explained, with a conspiratorial wink, that Laura's duties were being divided among the junior staff. Back at her desk, she opened the project management software. Reflected in her glasses was a single line of text, responsible for managing Mr. Vance's schedule, including accompanying him on business trips. A wave of dread washed over her. Steeling herself, she knocked on Julian's office door. She started to report on his upcoming schedule, but he cut her off, his long fingers tapping rhythmically on the polished desk. He told her to add a trip to Oak Haven, Connecticut, for the following day. That was where his family lived. She noted it down, then hesitantly asked if she was to accompany him. His gaze was as deep as the ocean, his face expressionless. The thought of moving out in the next 2 days while also preparing for a trip gave her a headache. Her distress must have been obvious. Julian raised an eyebrow, inquiring if it was inconvenient for her. She quickly shook her head, but then admitted she was in a rush to move and hadn't found a place yet. The moment the words were out, she regretted them. It was unprofessional. She added quickly that she would handle it and that it wouldn't affect her work. "You could stay with me," he said, just as she was about to speak again. Alara froze. He looked perfectly composed. He explained that his house was large, and she could stay until she found a suitable apartment. She swallowed, about to respond, when the glowing text exploded in front of her. "I'll bet a bag of chips he never lets her leave." Another wrote, "Wait, isn't this cohabitation plot point supposed to be 3 years from now?" And then, breaking news. The emotionally constipated male lead has learned to speak. While she was distracted by the spectral commentary, Julian had already decided the matter. He told her to bring her things over after work. Oak Haven was shrouded in a damp, gray rain. Inside a high-end indoor golf lounge, Julian conferred with his childhood friend, Carter, about their next investment. Alara did her best to blend into the background. It was difficult because a young man Carter had brought along kept staring at her. Finally, she couldn't take the stiff feeling in her neck anymore and turned to him. She asked if there was something on her face. The young man wasn't embarrassed at all. He smiled shyly. "Are you and Mr. Vance a thing?" he asked. Before she could process the question, he gestured to the drinks and snacks on their table. He pointed out that Mr. Vance had ordered things specifically for her, whereas Carter never considered his needs. He looked at her with envy, asking if she had some secret trick. As her confusion mounted, he tilted his head. "You know, for keeping the master happy." The meaning finally dawned on her, and her face burned with humiliation. She insisted that she and Mr. Vance had a purely professional relationship. The text appeared again, sharp and urgent. "Baby, stay away from these two. I'm from the spin-off story This Gets Ugly. He's gonna break that poor kid." Alara glanced at the boy again, noticing his pale skin and thin shoulders. She pursed her lips and offered him a piece of candy from her purse. "You don't always have to please other people," she said softly. "Your own happiness is what matters most." She immediately regretted it, feeling like she was preaching from a place of privilege. But the boy took the candy and thanked her with a genuine smile. Soon after, Julian and Carter returned. Alara shot to her feet. Carter grinned, asking if she'd consider jumping ship to work for him, winking theatrically. Remembering the floating text, she instinctively took a half step back, closer to Julian. She politely declined the offer. As Carter was about to press the issue, Julian picked up his coat and walked out without a word. Alara turned and hurried after him. The world outside the car window was dark. When the engine cut, she realized they weren't at the hotel. Julian explained curtly that he had driven to his family home by mistake. He mentioned he was supposed to have dinner with them while in town. He offered to call her a cab if she didn't want to stay. In the dim light, he looked unusually vulnerable. A piece of gossip she'd heard flashed in her mind. Julian's childhood had been miserable. Ignored by his parents for his younger brother. Raised primarily by a grandfather who had passed away 2 years ago. No one in his family truly cared for him. An unexpected pang of sympathy went through her. She put her hand over his as he reached for his phone, the well-practiced platitudes of a good assistant spilling out. She told him it would be an honor to have dinner with his family. As she pulled her hand back, she saw the faint hint of a smile in his eyes. The Vance estate was even larger than she'd imagined. A butler greeted them at the door with a troubled expression. He explained that the younger son had demanded a ski trip, so Mr. and Mrs. Vance had taken him and wouldn't be back. Julian seemed completely unsurprised. "Serve dinner," was all he said. The meal was silent. Julian had no interest in lingering. Back at the hotel, Alara lay on her bed, her mind reeling from the day's bizarre events. Before she could make sense of anything, her phone rang. It was Julian. His voice was low and raspy. After she emailed him the requested file, she couldn't help but ask if he was feeling sick. There was a pause on the other end, followed by 2 coughs, before he told her to get some rest and hung up. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became. The temperature in Oakhaven had dropped sharply. He had definitely caught a cold. She decided to go out and buy some medicine. Her hand was on the doorknob when the screen before her lit up again. "I'll bet you anything he's waiting for her. Such a delicate, helpless little flower." Another appeared. "Who needs a fishing lure when you've got a fever?" She hesitated. The comments shifted. Why'd she stop? Can she see us? Alara tensed. Then one message flashed by that made up her mind. Julian's fever is 102. She sighed and opened the door, leaving the swirling text behind. She returned to the hotel chilled to the bone and knocked on Julian's door. He looked exhausted, his cheeks flushed from a low-grade fever, which only made his eyes seem brighter. He invited her in. Considering the occasional appearances of the text, she was hesitant to enter, suggesting she shouldn't disturb his rest. A look of clear disappointment crossed his face. He coughed, a racking sound. "Are you afraid of me, Miss Davis?" he asked, his voice weak. His eyelids, tinged with pink, trembled slightly, creating an image of profound fragility. Her grip on the pharmacy bag tightened. The next thing she knew, she was in his suite, mixing a packet of cold and flu powder into a mug of hot water. The room was quiet, the dim lighting feeling almost intimate. She could feel his eyes on her back, and her ears grew warm. She stirred the mixture faster. "It's ready," she said, turning. He thanked her politely, but as he reached for the mug, his hand trembled and he sloshed the dark liquid onto the nightstand. Mortified, he turned his head away. "You should go," he mumbled. "I'll drink it later." She stared at him, confused. One moment he wanted her here, the next he was pushing her away. Remembering his prideful nature, her heart softened. Looking at his pale profile, she picked up the mug. "If you don't mind," she said carefully, "I could help you." His ears turned a deep shade of red. "Thank you," he whispered. The room fell quiet again. As she carefully spooned the medicine into his mouth, her thoughts began to wander. His lips, glistening with moisture from the drink, parted and closed with each spoonful. They looked soft. Realizing the direction of her thoughts, her hand shook, almost dropping the spoon. When the medicine was gone, she stood up, not daring to meet his eyes. "You should rest now." His voice was a deep, gentle murmur. "Good night, Elara." After the business trip, she officially began living with her boss. Through the small details of their shared daily life, she discovered Julian wasn't cold at all. He was gentle, considerate, a perfect roommate. This new familiarity carried over to the office, and their interactions became less formal. On a Friday afternoon, after seeing a client out, Leo shot her a meaningful look. She opened her messenger app. The office gossip group was on fire. Who was that woman who just went into Mr. Vance's office? Someone claimed it was a major client's daughter. Another insisted it was his arranged fiancée. Elara felt a strange stillness. She looked at the frosted glass of Julian's office door. Her gaze fell to the potted plant on her desk, a trailing jasmine he had given her. Fearing she would kill it, she'd brought it to the office. Her feelings were a tangled mess. It had to be those absurd floating messages that had skewed her perception. Julian was handsome, successful, and kind beneath his cool exterior. Marriage and family were the natural course for a man like him. As she was lost in thought, a voice broke through. "Can we talk?" A beautiful young woman was smiling down at her. All around them, colleagues were trying to look busy while obviously listening in. Remembering the group chat, Elara forced a smile. In a quiet coffee shop, the woman, Sienna, got straight to the point. She had heard Elara and Julian were close. She told her not to be nervous. She just wanted to ask about his likes and dislikes. After all, Sienna added with a bright, expectant look, "We'll be family soon." Elara's mouth felt dry. She tried to smile. "Mr. Vance and I aren't that close," she managed, then added, "He doesn't like spicy food." She didn't know what else she said. As they were leaving, Sienna gave her a long, searching look. "You seem to care about him a lot," she remarked pointedly. Elara's hand tightened into a fist. Watching Sienna walk away, she looked down at the sidewalk. It was time to find her own apartment, and fast. Just as she'd steeled her resolve, the familiar text scrolled into view. What the hell? System update? Finally. Look, it's our bright and beautiful starlet. Honey, don't worry. This woman is a total censored. The text hadn't appeared for a while. She wondered if the system had realized she could see it. Her eyes lingered on the censored word, her suspicions hardening into certainty. She returned to the office to find most people packing up for the weekend. She sat at her desk, her mind in turmoil. A notification popped up on her phone. It was from Julian, his profile picture a photo of a meteor. Work for another 20 minutes. We'll go home together. At dinner in his minimalist dining room, Julian placed a piece of beef in her bowl. Mrs. Gable made this especially, he said. Try it. She managed a weak smile and a thank you. He noticed her mood, his expression darkening slightly, but he said nothing. After the quiet meal, she gathered her courage. I found an apartment. Julian's hand paused. He set down his utensils. Why? Looking into his eyes, she couldn't lie. You have a fiancé. It's not appropriate for me to live here with you. Her voice grew quieter with each word. He frowned. What fiancé? Miss Sienna. She said you would be family soon. At the mention of her name, the tension in his brow eased. She's my cousin's fiancé, he explained. Thinking back, Sienna's words had been ambiguous, but not technically a lie. He looked at her intently, his expression serious. I have no plans to get married. The directness of his statement felt heavy. The atmosphere shifted. Flustered, she looked away. Don't move out, he said, his voice a low whisper. Please, stay with me a little longer. His final words were almost inaudible. Thinking of his lonely past, of his eyes that looked like the last patch of snow on an isolated island, her resolve melted. Okay, she agreed. Her work life became richer. After signing a contract, she and Julian had dinner at a restaurant. The conversation turned to her red cord. She held up her wrist, studying it. She explained that she had been a sickly child, and her grandmother, worried, had gotten her a blessing cord from a temple. It looked ordinary, but it was filled with her grandmother's love, so she had worn it for years. Julian nodded in understanding. Winter had come to Bridgewater City. A bitter wind swept through the streets, and Alara couldn't help but sneeze. Julian stepped forward and wrapped her scarf more snugly around her neck. His handsome eyes met hers, and an intimate warmth blossomed between them. Sweetheart? A hesitant voice called out. Alara's eyes widened. A few feet away stood her mother. She instinctively pulled away from Julian. Mom? What are you doing here? Her family didn't live in the city. Before she could ask more, her mother's gaze shifted to Julian. And who is this? Alara quickly explained that Julian was her boss. Upon hearing this, her mother became effusive, praising his success and asking if her daughter had been any trouble. Julian smiled and exchanged polite pleasantries. When Alara asked again why she was there, her mother's expression turned somber. She finally admitted that her grandmother's old health problems had flared up, and they had come to see a specialist. They hadn't told her because her grandmother didn't want her to worry. Alara's anxiety spiked, but her mother reassured her that the tests hadn't shown anything serious. Just as she was about to relax, the text messages returned. No, honey, it's not her diabetes. The censored. The story says she'll pass away in the spring. The world tilted. Julian caught her as she swayed. Seeing her pale face, her mother asked what was wrong. She shook her head and insisted on taking her grandmother for a full checkup. Her mother waved it off, saying they'd already done one, thanks to her friend's daughter who worked at the main hospital. She then tried to push Alara into adding the young woman as a contact, hinting that maybe her grandmother wanted to see great-grandchildren soon. Alara froze. The text flashed again. "Hey, someone check on our boy. He's about to shatter." CO Vance's heart just turned to ash. She snuck a guilty glance at Julian. His eyes were downcast, his expression unreadable. She cleared her throat and insisted on a new checkup. As her mother looked on, confused, Julian spoke. His tone was gentle as he explained that he knew a renowned team of specialists. A full workup with them would be more thorough. If Alara was worried, they should go there. Her mother, flattered and a little overwhelmed by the familiar way he referred to her daughter, quickly agreed. Alara stole another look at Julian, trying to gauge his mood. He probably wasn't angry, right? He was angry. Though he acted the same, she could feel a new distance between them. She tried to find a moment to talk to him, but he became impossibly busy, leaving early and coming home late. At the office, there was always someone else around. Her messages to him were met with short, conversation-ending replies. Then came the business trip to Switzerland to sign a new international partnership. Her name was not on the list of accompanying staff. She found Leo and asked him about it. He slapped his forehead, admitting he'd thought something felt off. She hesitated, then asked if she could be added. He scratched his head and told her she'd have to ask Julian directly. 10 minutes before the end of the day, she managed to slip into his office as he was packing his briefcase. "Do you have a minute?" His eyes, deep as pools of shadow, rested on her. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice small. "Grandma's checkup found a heart condition. If we hadn't intervened, it could have led to sudden cardiac arrest." "Thank you." Julian gave a slight nod. "Anything else?" he asked, his tone colder than ever. A knot of frustration and hurt formed in her throat. She bit her lip. I saw the travel list. A wave of inexplicable indignation washed over her. "You said you would teach me how to ski." Julian closed his eyes and let out a soft, weary sigh. His voice was barely a whisper. "You're the one who started this, Alara." The team arrived in Switzerland at dusk, the sky painted with brilliant streaks of color. When she got her room key, Alara discovered she was in the room next to Julian's. Standing before his door to tell him about dinner, she was struck by a sense of déjà vu, remembering the night on the yacht 3 months earlier. Her ears grew warm. Just as she was about to knock, the door swung open. Their eyes met. "Tea time for dinner," she stammered. A corner of his mouth lifted into a smile. It seemed the old Julian was back. As her spirits lifted, the text appeared. "Ah, the innocent little flower has turned into a man-eating Venus flytrap. Honey, you should really look behind you." She stopped and turned. Julian was walking just behind her, his handsome eyes filled with a gentle warmth. She dismissed her doubts. The contract signing went smoothly. The new partners invited them all to go skiing. To avoid any awkwardness, the rest of the team went to the main public resort, while Julian took Alara to the partners' private mountain slope. He patiently taught her the basics, and soon she was able to handle simple runs. Tired from skiing, she packed a snowball. He saw through her clumsy attempt at a sneak attack before she even got close. Their playful fight ended with him pinning her in the soft powder. "Do you give up?" he teased. She was laughing too hard to breathe. Yes, I give up." The world went quiet, the only sound her own panting. The crisp scent of pine and snow filled her senses. She looked up. Julian's face was inches from hers. Tiny snowflakes caught on his long eyelashes. His eyelids, she noticed, were a delicate, translucent pink. She swallowed hard. He reached out and removed her glasses. His eyes drew closer. Her phone rang. She rushed to a hotel room where Leo was waiting. "Your face is so red," he noted, surprised. She dodged the observation, claiming she had run all the way. He explained with a sigh that she was the only one who had brought medicine. During the winter, the Swiss temperatures were low, and a few of the less hardy team members had come down with fevers. Ever since Julian's illness in Oakhaven, she'd made a habit of packing fever reducers. Remembering the scene from 20 minutes prior, she patted Leo's shoulder. "Good thing your call came when it did." Leo, thinking she was talking about their sick colleague, just grinned. She gave him a serious look. "When we get back, I'm telling Mr. Vance to give you an award for civic duty." He took her seriously and started daydreaming about his bonus. The hours passed. The colleague's fever broke. She was about to go find Julian when a chaotic noise erupted from outside the hotel. Amid a cacophony of foreign languages, she heard a single, terrifying shout in English, "Avalanche." She shot up and ran to the window. A massive wall of snow was breaking loose from the mountain, thundering down with immense force, directly toward the private ski slope. She turned and ran for the door. Leo grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? It's dangerous out there." Her voice trembled, barely audible. "Julian is still on the slope." Leo froze, then immediately started dialing emergency services while telling her to alert the rest of the team. The avalanche eventually subsided, leaving a path of destruction. The main resort was also affected, and several colleagues were injured. With their team leader on maternity leave, they had to adapt quickly. Leo would take the rest of the team back home, while Alara would stay behind to find Julian. "Can you handle it alone?" Leo asked, his face etched with worry. She nodded without hesitation. "I'll find him." That night, she joined the main rescue party. The search area was vast. Julian could have been swept anywhere. As the hours ticked by with no sign of him, her eyes began to burn with tears. He was so fragile. Now he was out here alone and hurt. Her mind tortured her with what-ifs. If only she hadn't pulled away before he could kiss her. Hot tears fell into the snow, melting small, dark holes. Suddenly, the glowing text filled her vision. "Oh no, don't cry, honey. Damn it, my eyes are leaking." The text. She could use the text. She looked up at the empty air, her expression pleading. "Do you know where Julian is?" There was a beat of silence. Then the comments exploded. "The fictional character can see US. Of course she can. She's my favorite. Wait, focus. Does anyone know where he is?" The book says he's in the censored direction of the ski slope, about censored meters forward. Her heart, which had leaped with hope, sank when she saw the asterisks. "The location is blocked." She cried out in frustration. Understanding her meaning, the commenters rallied. Using clever wordplay and roundabout phrasing, they managed to convey Julian's location. She grabbed a professional rescue team and rushed to a valley southeast of the main slope. Sure enough, they found one of his skis sticking out of the snow. Following the trail, they finally found him, unconscious. She helped the medics wrap him in an emergency blanket, her tears dripping onto his cold hand. "Julian," she whispered, "you are not allowed to die." The rescue had been timely. Julian woke up the next day. She was still slumped over in the chair beside his bed, fast asleep. The nurse coming in to change his 4-drip startled her awake. She looked up and met his gaze. "You're awake," she said, scratching her cheek. His throat worked. "I heard you're the one who saved me." She quickly waved her hands. No, it was all thanks to the rescue team." He suddenly grabbed her wrist. "Why did you stay? You knew how dangerous it was. He stared at her, his grip tight. Her throat felt constricted. All the words she had planned to say vanished. The light in his eyes grew dark and complex. A helpful comment flickered into view. Say something. Your man is about to go full dark side. While he was giving you the cold shoulder, he was literally building a basement dungeon for you. She paused, taking in the message. This was the same delicate flower from the hotel room? Before she could question it, Julian's gaze dropped, his expression turning exquisitely vulnerable. I guess I was expecting too much. As he adopted this pathetic look, another comment appeared. Who grits their teeth while acting like a sad puppy? Love really does make you blind. Her ears turned red. Taking a deep breath, she reversed their grip, her fingers lacing through his. He looked up, stunned. Outside the window, fresh snow began to fall. Her voice was small, but perfectly clear. I love you. On the day they made their relationship official, Julian was ecstatic. He held her tightly, whispering in her ear that she could never, ever leave him. She stroked his hair and promised she wouldn't. 3 months into their office romance, Julian's cousin, Ryan, got married. She learned then that Ryan was the cousin in question. Seeing her dumbfounded expression, Ryan had the grace to look apologetic, admitting that Julian had liked her for a very long time. It all clicked into place. She shot him a dirty look. He said sincerely that she was a good person, otherwise he never would have helped her so much. After a brief, playful argument with Julian about the deception, she let it go. When they returned to Oak Haven as a couple, Julian's parents could see the truth. After a long, silent moment, his father sighed and asked Julian to join him in the study. His mother sat with Alara in the living room, her voice full of weary resignation. She admitted they had failed Julian in affection, and they didn't know how to fix it. Since you're here now, she pleaded, her eyes, so much like Julian's, filling with tears. Please, just take good care of him. Alara nodded softly. If no one else would love him, she would. An hour later, Julian came downstairs. He seemed subdued, and they left without accepting the offer of dinner. On the dark street outside the grand house, she wrapped her arms around him. You have me now, she whispered. Approaching their first anniversary, which coincided with the holidays, she called her mother and told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, her mother asked if they were absolutely sure about their choice, if they could withstand the judgment and always be there for each other. After Alara's firm yes, her mother sighed. Then bring him home for the holidays. Your grandmother wants to meet him. Her grandmother had been her biggest supporter all along. Her mother's final instruction, through a tearful laugh, was a reminder that boys eat a lot, and her grandmother had already bought a mountain of groceries. Alara hung up, wiped a tear from her eye, and threw her arms around Julian. Come home with me, she said with a brilliant smile. 3 years into their relationship, she stumbled upon Julian's dungeon. The setup in the basement sent a shiver down her spine. The floating text had been telling the truth. She had quit her corporate job the year before to pursue her passion for teaching. The difference in their schedules meant they spent less time together, and she knew he was unhappy about it, even growing jealous of her close relationships with her students. But she hadn't understood the depth of his insecurity until she saw the basement. That night, when he came home, he buried his face in her neck. Did you find anything interesting today, my love? He murmured. To forestall whatever darkness was brewing, she cupped his face in her hands. Julian, she said, her voice steady, let's get married. The shift in him was immediate. The intensity in his eyes softened to pure, clear shock. Really? He stammered. She smiled. Really? Because I love you so much. He didn't reply, just lowered his head as something warm and wet dripped onto her neck. At their wedding in Switzerland, both their families were there along with Ryan, Sienna, and Carter. Surrounded by snow-capped mountains, they exchanged rings. Just as they kissed, a final, faint line of text shimmered into view. Be happy, you two. This is where our journey with you ends. Until we meet again,